everybody to the ASU Learning Human event. My name is Holden Long. I'll be helping moderate today's session. The session is entitled Avoiding the Zombie Apocalypse to Create the Brave New World, and we have three great presenters here for you today. We have Kim, Heather, and Dan. So without any further ado, go ahead and take it away, guys, and have some fun.
I am sharing my screen. I'm going to put on present and welcome to the Learning Futures, Avoiding the Zombie Apocalypse to Create the Brave New World. I'd like to let my three co-presenters introduce themselves. We'll start off with Kim.
Yeah, I'm Kim Flintoff. I'm from Curtin University in Western Australia. It's currently just past midnight. It's the witching hour, ideal for scary stories around the campfire. Looking forward to sharing some insights tonight about the work we're doing with the Learning Futures Network and Learning Futures generally here in Western Australia.
And I'm Heather Hasley. I'm the co-executive director of the Learning Futures Collaboratory here at Arizona State University. I can't share the screen and turn off my zombie mask, so y'all get my zombie mask for the remainder of the presentation. I hope it's not too distracting to see me in my zombie mask the whole time. As soon as we have a moment, I will go and flip it off. But I'm also really excited. We at Arizona State have been working on Learning Futures for about the past dedicated efforts for about the past 15 months. So excited to talk to you all about that.
Thanks, Heather. And it's totally horrifying. I'm just struggling to speak, and I wish I loaded up my Snapchat filter as well. But I'm Dan Munnelly. I'm the other co-executive director with Heather at Learning Futures Collaboratory. A huge fan of Shaun of the Dead, as you can see from the backdrop. So excuse me with the many references to Shaun of the Dead that we'll go through today, from my view anyway. But as Heather said, you know, we both work at ASU in leading the Learning Futures Collaboratory, and obviously the connection there with Kim in Australia as well with the Learning Futures Network. We're all very much interested and excited and involved in thinking about the future, and this session was a natural fit for us because we love looking forward and we love imagining what that horizon looks like. So look forward to today's conversation.
Awesome. So the way this session is going to go is, first of all, I got my zombie mask off. There we go. And so the way the session is going to go is that we are going to talk a little bit for a few minutes about just giving you some background on what we do in each of our areas, and then we're going to gather around the campfire, even though it's only 9:15 a.m. here in Phoenix and about 110 degrees, so the campfire is a little warm and maybe ill-advised at this point. But we're going to sort of take some of the tropes of zombie movies and flip them on their head and show you how the work of Learning Futures can actually be better and brighter, and how we can avoid this idea of the zombie apocalypse. So let's start with the Learning Futures Collaboratory at ASU. So this is a unit that Dan and I co-lead. Our mission at ASU is to achieve learner success through improving the creative and digital fluency within next generation environments of all of our learners. And when we say all of our learners, we really mean everyone at Arizona State University. So that includes faculty, staff, students, alumni, casual learners, the lifelong learner, our K-12 learners. So everyone in the ASU ecosystem to us is considered a learner, including myself and Dan. And the way we do this work is we do this in collective action communities of practice. So we imagine the future 5 years from now, sort of that third horizon, the very exciting things that are coming. And then we bring together leaders around those different initiatives that can help actionize those dreams. And then we put together a work stream, and a work stream focuses on a series of projects today that end up getting us to that future state. So we have about 7 of those work streams running, and everything from immersive learning, AR, VR. If you've seen Verbella, that's something that's coming out of what we're doing in the Learning Futures Collaboratory, as well as digital credentialing, workforce of the future, lab of the future, some other really cool initiatives that we have going on. We also have about 300 people from across ASU working with us in the Learning Futures Collaboratory, and we are sponsored collaboratively across the institution. So we technically sit, most of our appointment is in the University Technology Office, but we also report into the Provost Office as well as our online division at ASU, Ed Plus. Dan, anything additional?
Oh, just to say the context around ASU, really, you know, when we say 300 participants, you know, before I came to ASU, that would be a very, very large number of people to be involved in projects. But ASU is a very large university, you know, with over 120,000 students. Everything kind of happens at scale with us. So, you know, having that critical mass of people is been a really kind of interesting opportunity and challenge, you know, for the LFC. So I guess when we, you know, when Heather and I talk about the work that we do, and we will share some of that and talk through some of the things today, it's always in that context of a large environment, which is very different, and we both understand because we both came from smaller environments before. So just to set that context, I think for the LFC part of this. But maybe we move over to Kim and hear from Kim.
Yeah, Kim.
Yeah, as I said, I'm at Curtin University in Western Australia, and for the last few years I've been the Learning Futures Advisor within the university. The role began as an advisory role. My role was to look at the trends that were happening around the world, was to looking at shifts that were occurring and speculating on how they might impact on our teaching and learning priorities within the university. What's begun to happen over time is that the role of the work has become more of an engagement, a collaboration approach. So the collaboratory model that Heather and Dan are talking about sits very comfortably in my mindset. So that we began with creating a network of schools and other organisations back in July 2017. And since then, we've grown to around 230 member organisations. That includes K-12 schools, other universities. I'm pleased to say that the Collaboratory is a member of the network as well. We have government and public sector, we have community and cultural groups, we have professional associations, and we have industry members. And the idea is that we're trying to find ways to bring all those people together with a focus on the future of work and the future of learning. And so we'll talk about some of the examples that are cropping up, but we're finding some really interesting ways of working with higher ed, with K-12 and with industry and other partners, so that everyone gets, there's mutual benefit, I suppose, is what we're looking for. The little map there on the screen sort of shows you where our membership is. The bulk of our membership is in Western Australia, but increasingly we're spreading out across the country, and we're starting to get a few dotted outposts through North America and Europe as well as Southeast Asia. Curtin University itself has campuses around the Indian Ocean rim. So we have campuses in Mauritius, in Dubai, in Singapore, in Malaysia, and a couple of campuses within Western Australia. So we have a School of Mines out in the Goldfields, and we have a city campus where our Future of Work Institute operates. Our business school has a graduate school there, and our law school, and then our main campus on Bentley. So we're a fairly large organisation as well, somewhere around 6,000 staff when I started. I think we've lost a few over the years, but we operate in not only in a face-to-face setting, but we're very well established in the online space as well. We launched Curtin Online about 2010, and we're also partnerships with the edX consortium as well, so contributing to the technological developments in that space, as well as providing MOOCs and other engagement opportunities through different platforms. Again, we're also looking at stackable credentials, use of virtual reality, all of the exciting cutting-edge technologies, and how they can inform both teaching and learning and research capabilities within the university and across our partnerships. So there we go. Awesome.
All right. Well, let's jump into the meat of it. Okay, there's going to be a lot of puns today. Well, I have a feeling we're going to be very punny. So scary stories. When we started to talk about this, Dan, Kim, and I got on a call And we started to think about the theme of the day as this idea of flipping scary stories. And scary stories are things that arouse intense feelings of like fear or disgust or shock. And they're things that are generally considered negative and often have, these terrifying endings, and, half the people in the story die along the way, on a good day, right? And so we really wanted to take some of those tropes, and then that took us down the thing of looking at the tropes of scary stories, and thinking about, how people really find the idea of the future, the idea of change, a really scary thing in a similar way to watching a horror film roll out. And we've seen how people have reacted that way in this light of this crisis, the COVID crisis. And so we decided that we would actually take all of these zombie tropes and actually flip them on their head and think about the ways that Learning Futures actually isn't a zombie apocalypse, but it is sort of this idea of a brighter, more wonderful world that we can all collaboratively create together. So just the zombie tropes that we're going to go through today and flip on their heads are that the world is a dystopia, and that everything has gone to I was going to swear there, but I'm not going to swear. But the world has fallen apart, and modern society crumbles. And you're all fighting for rations, and you're all, carrying your weapons and invading the grocery stores to get whatever resources are left. You find a band that you all gather together so that you can survive and fight off the zombies together. And that you always look with a little bit of worry at the new person to the group. Are they going to steal your rations? Are they going to join? Are they going to become one of you? And then when you actually face those zombies, you have to destroy their brains. You can't just chop off their arm. It keeps coming at you. You can't just chop off their leg. They'll crawl at you. You actually have to destroy their brains. And that just one bite, only one, can turn you forever. And there's no turning back. And that, slow zombies are fun zombies, I think. In zombie movies, the ones that are slow are kind of just hulking, and it's the mass of them that gets scary. But the fast zombies are just terrifying. The 28 days later, the new breed of zombies, because how do you even escape something that comes at you so fast and washes over you? So with that, I've set up the dystopian zombie world. Let's talk about how we flip those. All right, addressing the first one, the world is the dystopia. So when we were talking about flipping this, we thought about, actually, the dystopia is now. The dystopia is the world we're living in and the state of education that we have today. The idea that, we have so much inequity, that we have access is a huge issue. The way we learn, if we listen to President Crow's, philosophical statements this morning, is extremely outdated. And we haven't really changed the way that we teach and we learn in these settings significantly in a long time. And we really need a revolution in this space. And that's what Learning Futures are all about, is creating that future together. Dan, Kim?
Yeah, I agree. I think the news and the media is full of all the challenges that we're facing. We know that the state of education around the world isn't ideal, and I think the story often ends with that, with just saying that it's not ideal, it's not perfect, so therefore somehow we're all somehow derelict in our responsibilities as educators and other things like that. What I find in the Learning Future space is that real sense of purpose, that sense of drive, and as we're sort of drawn on from the Shaping EDU community, is the dreaming and the doing takes us into the space where we actually start making the changes that we want to see. We start to take the journey forward. We start to bring student voice to bear. We start to find ways and new ways that educators can engage with their own work and engage with their students and start to partner across the board. So that sense of the future starts to become something far more positive and far more engaging and enticing than it is dystopian, I think.
Yeah, and I would agree. The idea that the future is some sort of dystopia is something, a myth we really need to dispel really quickly and be much more optimistic about that future horizon. I was listening to that session this morning as well, from Palm Beach State College, and a lot of for the fear of industry taking over and this kind of these waves of things that are going to impact on us. I hear a lot of fear about the future, but really flipping that, there's an equal amount of opportunity in those challenges. And I think that's always been the position of learning futures, is to envision a future state and to think about how can we get there and get there in a better state. So whilst dystopia might surround us right now, there's always a better horizon to look towards, to work towards.
I think for me, I think it's also about setting our values for the future, right? And then designing towards those values. So if we say that we want the future to be more inclusive, we can actually, and we set that as one of our values, we can actually design towards that. If we want it to be more learner-centered, if we want students to have more agency in their learning, if we want it to be more experiential and more immersive, we have benchmarks on the horizon, and we can actually start to envision, okay, well, what would a world look like that is more inclusive, and then start to design backwards from where we are today, right? And say, okay, so if that's the endpoint, we've imagined it, we have a positive, beautiful thing. What do we need to change today? What do we need to discard today? It makes it easier to take away a lot of our practices if they don't meet our values anymore, and then it's easier to get people to buy into that vision, I think, when you tie it to values. All right. Any last thoughts on the world is a dystopia, the future can be better?
No, I'm happy with that one.
All right. So in this one, in the zombie apocalypse, modern society crumbles. And the way we flip that is, I think we have to acknowledge that change does bring disruption. It brings changes to the way people work, the way people live, the way people see things. And sometimes that's pretty and it goes smoothly, but often it doesn't. Some people come on the train and some people are left behind. But the end state is often for the better. I'm paraphrasing C.S. Lewis, who said, the world we see ahead is better than the world we leave behind. And I have a true sort of feeling about that. I also love Alice in Wonderland. So if we can hang out in C.S. Lewis's world, I'm pretty okay with that. Thoughts, stories?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot to be said for the notion of change and disruption. We see that modern society crumbling, and at the moment there's this really interesting space where I was watching some statistics today where 65% of Australians are saying that they want the world to be different as we emerge from this pandemic, and they want to go to a simpler, more straightforward, more peaceful sort of and more harmonious future. That sort of vision, I mean, the crumbling of what was there before can actually leave us with something that's far more concentrated in the sorts of values that we're actually aiming at, and to hark back to that that comment that you're making there, Heather, is that what we actually really truly hold as important starts to become more focused as things that are very familiar and pressing begin to crumble, and we start to say, okay, what do we want to hold on to, and what do we want to carry forward? And that's, I think, one of the things that change brings with it. The disruption is that it becomes unsettling, because we have to let go of things, and we often end up with a void as we let go. And that in the classroom, that can be terrifying. There's nothing more terrifying to a teacher than not knowing what's going to happen next. And I think that is part of the disruption that comes, is as things fall away, we have to find new ways to step in and to fill those voids. And but often what we find are far more effective and far more interesting, and often far more inclusive.
Yeah, I totally love that. I think that you're absolutely right. And I think that Being at ASU, we're in a university that just feeds on disruption, right? We're just like, innovation is number one. And so people sort of see change as their day-to-day, which can be interesting because that can actually cause change fatigue, right? This idea that I don't actually know where I'm going tomorrow, so why even try? Like, I'll just figure it out tomorrow. But it also gets people excited if you can get them bought into the vision. And so I think that we have the benefit at ASU, at least in my mind, of always having this ample set of people willing to join the change bandwagon, and become advocates and mentors and change makers of their own. And I think it's not just in our staff, but in our faculty and particularly in our students, actually. I'm seeing our students, we have a very active community called Change Makers on campus, and it's one we've in the Learning Futures have connected with, because they are students who think that the world can be brighter, and they act as these change agents throughout the university. It's been one of the most effective things, is the student group led by students helping other students get on board, and really instilling that from the moment that they come to college, that anyone is a change maker, everyone can make change. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. If we work together, we can do this. And so I really feel like even amongst change fatigue, people still want to rally around this idea that change equals better, not change equals fear and things crumbling away.
There's an element of disruption fatigue as well, and I think that's something that we see it. Disruption, interruption, innovation, this sort of endless cycle. As a personal view, you actually need quite a lot of time to think to be able to deal with disruption. Otherwise, it is a wave, and we don't make time to think. We don't provide people time to meditate and consider what's actually happening, to be able to react to it, and then to challenge the disruption and to experiment with it and to fail in what your response or succeed. So really, that fatigue, whether it's change fatigue or disruption fatigue, requires of you a response which is considered and thoughtful and timely. And I always think we really don't make much allowance for that in the pace of things that we do. And maybe as we move out of the Stone Age, as President Crow said, at the end of the Stone Age era, we allow for that, or we become smarter about that and more efficient. Light speed education, as he calls it. Who knows?
I think we can all, I think if we just look back to the way we started this whole conference, was with this idea of reflecting on meditative states and how we all needed to sort of process all of this. So I totally agree. I am for the future where we have periods of fast, periods of slow, and periods of reflection.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, at Curtin back in 2007, we started our Curtin Innovation Awards. So we really embraced this whole idea of celebrating innovation, celebrating shifts. And then, we had our transformation of learning and teaching, it was a strategic mission for several years with the university. And I think with that notion of change fatigue and disruption fatigue, it can become something, it can become a very comfortable place in itself to be sitting within that space of looking ever forward and always trialing, always on the brink of becoming, I suppose, and before something else tweaks it and takes it in a slightly different direction. And a lot of our staff seem to thrive on that. Equally, there's also a lot of staff who do sort of say, can't we just settle for a while?
Yeah, I think that's the question between settling and allowing yourself space to be creative. So I think there's I think it's how we never settle, but always give yourself space and time to let the creative juices flow. I don't know what that balance is. I don't actually know if I have it personally, and I probably vacillate between, the other end of it, which is too much and not enough creative time. Yep. All right, so I love this one. This one's my favorite because I think you need a group to survive, and I think we haven't even flipped it. We've said, yes, you need a group and. This is a yes and moment, an improv moment, rather than a yes, than a flipping. Because I think that we can only really thrive in doing the future if we have collaborative communities of practice that work around it. One person on the hilltop being like, look, here's the future, come join me, sometimes works, but often does not. And it definitely doesn't bring the rest of society with it, or the rest of learning along the journey with it. And so while you do need some explorers out there at the front lines who are working on learning futures, you really do also need these large scale communities to be able to help you envision that future, to buy into the vision, to internalize those values, and then to start working on it together. In the Learning Futures Collaboratory, we don't have any staff, really, any full-time staff. Me and Dan, you're looking at the whole of the full-time staff of the Learning Futures Collaboratory. And we share half of another person who really thinks about transformation, but everyone else is a part, we purchase part of someone's time to lead something, and we do these interdisciplinary groups purposely so that it doesn't feel like it's siloed in a particular college or a particular unit, or it's that person's thing. I mean, even if you look at the two of us together, we're co-leaders. You rarely see that. We actually work in a way that is collaborative, and we actually have to negotiate what that future is together and try to embody this idea that the future isn't owned by any one of us, it's owned by all of us. So in my mind, this is like the most important of them all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the flip is actually on from surviving to thriving. And that's the key is that you can survive by yourself, but it's often quite unfulfilling. It's quite a hollow survival, and unless you've got Wilson there on the island with you. And it's when the ideas start to bubble away and start to take on a life across the network, in my case, that we really start to see a simple idea, the germ of ideas, start to find expression in action. And that's, I find it's fascinating. We launched a project just prior to Easter, right in the middle of the COVID crisis here in Western Australia, and we sought to bring student voice to solving local community problems that were brought on by COVID. This coming Friday, we have a select group of the 700 K-12 students who put forward ideas to help one of our senior researchers and one of our most recognised surgeons function more efficiently in the hospital environment. And they've designed solutions to help her with burns patients, but also looking at managing and maintaining the transmission and containment of the COVID virus within the hospital environment. So, that scale and that scope wasn't even on our minds. We thought we might get a few people to sort of bounce some ideas around, but it really sort of captured people's imagination, and this thing's growing now and evolving. And when that growth and evolution starts to occur and the ideas start to take on its own life, it's great to be able to sort of sit back, and that's where I get a moment to stop and think. I've done all the legwork, I've done all the running around, I've done all the sleepless nights, and then I get a little bit of time to sort of sit back and say, okay, well, how can this go next? How can we improve it? How can we take it further? How can we make it more relevant to more people? And that comes through working with others, to exploring new ideas. I can't do it all in isolation. I have to do it by bouncing that off others, and that's really, I think, where the collaborative communities come into play. We had 22 schools and 700 kids embark on this pilot program, and this coming weekend we've got representatives of government, we've got representatives of the health industry, technology industries, all sorts of people coming along, watching a group of kids between the ages of 13 and 17 making suggestions about how to make our society and how to make our community a better place.
That really is the power of the network, Kim, is the opportunity for those groups to learn from each other and better. There's that scene in Shaun of the Dead where Ed and Sean are trying to make their way out from the Winchester pub across the back streets of the village of the town, and they come across another group who have got a slightly better plan than them, and a slightly better outlook on their future. And the two groups meet, and they have this moment where they see each other in like a future world, and they, you know, each person has their equivalent, and they see themselves as a better version. And those groups kind of learn from each other, then just pass and move on again. And that idea that, you know, that the network is stronger together, and they don't always have to be in the same place going forward. It's I think they call it the other. They just call it the other better, which is a really nice idea.
Yeah,
I love that idea. The other better.
I'm sorry. I'm just picking up on the chat there. There's a nice question there from Adam regarding perceptions of university staff being stuck in the mud and not wanting change, being siloed and not wanting to move out of those silos. And do we? What are our thoughts on that? Do we see that in action?
I mean, we see that in, okay, so I would say yes, and we also see the flip side of that. So I think that Dan and I in our work have seen immense excitement and enthusiasm and willingness to go above and beyond their full-time jobs, working, you know, on these projects on the side, and then incorporating them and changing their own work to be able to incorporate some of these principles. And I think that happens when you have a really great vision that people buy into, that people can, and that aligns to their values. That brings us like back to the beginning, because I think that if you tie the change to their vision and values, I think that people are looking for an opportunity to contribute to something bigger than themselves. And a lot of work that we have people doing is sort of them pushing the buttons, the maintenance of the day-to-day. And if we say to them, look, we can show you a better way, a better world, a better way that you can be a contributor, and the way that you can change things for the better, we found that actually people are happy to get on board. We call them our coalitions of the willing, right? Who then act as change agents themselves. And when those individuals, as you said, they start touching people, and they actually start spreading that change amongst each other. So I actually find, I find that yes, there are those unwilling to change, but I actually find more that are super excited to come on the train.
You use a term sometimes, Heather, and I like this. It's some people are volunteers and some are voluntold, and you know, I think that's sometimes there's a need to rally the troops, build a coalition of the willing, but at some point there's some groups need to actually be directed into that group to really kind of benefit from that. So I think there's a little bit of both, you know.
I'm all about converting the voluntold. So that is my personal mission in life, is to convert the voluntold.
Yeah, look, I think that there's also, once the networks start to thrive too, there comes, as someone's mentioned, the top-down sort of model there. From a genuinely collaborative community, you actually start to get the pincer movement occurs. You get the bottom up, the feed upwards, the managing upwards approach starts to take shape, and you start to see the needs and the demands for relevance and the demands for meaningful engagement starting to occur at the grassroots level, and that often drives upwards into management, and it's often management and senior executives in institutions are sometimes the last to see the needs that are actually there at the chalkboard, or what are they called, at the chalk face, and that's one thing that we have by bringing student voice into things, by bringing the voices of teachers, by bringing even professional staff within the university who work alongside the teaching staff and the research staff. You start to get a new set of priorities emerging, and that becomes really quite exciting. And it does feed upwards. It's when they start to see the outcomes and benefits. The senior executive are often become your best allies, but even though it wasn't necessarily their idea in the first place.
I think that ties nicely to our next slide, which is you never know who you can trust, and actually you never know where your allies would be found. And I think it's similar for us, is that we are partially a grassroots group, right? That brings those coalitions of the willing together, but we're also partially a strategic group. And the goal is to bring those two closer together, right? And so having the grassroots drive the strategic, having the strategic sometimes influence the, what we often have is that we have a strategic priority and match it with a grassroots interest, and then having the grassroots interest show value for that priority for change. So one of those examples is our ASU 101 course, which is required for every student at ASU. They were finding that people were dropping out and stopping out of the university because they didn't feel a sense of belonging to the university, right? And they couldn't figure out how their ASU career really related to, or their ASU journey related to their future career. And so what we did was we matched that with our extended reality immersive learning group, who were like, we want to make cool stuff in immersive learning. And we said, great, make cool stuff in immersive learning that ties to the ideas of belonging and career exploration that we can embed in our ASU 101 to help, you know, further the objectives of having people be retained at the university and meet their goals of graduating. So I think that there are ways that we can actually combine those two. And we found allies in the most unusual of places. You know, you find that one person, that one ally in the provost office, or you convert that one person's mind who, you know, we have one of our vice provosts who's, you know, sort of at the edge of retirement, and I would never have thought that he would be the biggest advocate for some of our most crazy immersive learning ideas, and is a huge champion. Even if he doesn't necessarily understand all the technology we're using, he says, I see the vision, I can see that it's different and it's better. So totally agree with you, Kim. Nothing to add to the allies slide, huh?
Yeah, look, there's plenty of discussion. I mean, what we see too is because we're such a broad network that extends beyond the bounds of the university, we start to get interest from all sorts of sectors. So because we have collaborative partnerships with schools and university and industry partners, we start to see, you know, like the Chamber of Commerce and Industry looking in the window saying, how can we bring other industry members to this problem, to this challenge, and how can we provide new opportunities, and how can we build local networks and subnets that have local relevance or regional or remote community relevance. And through those network relationships, you know, we start to find allies, we start to find connections, we start to find supporters and mentors who take us much further in the journey. And you know, we've got some fantastic examples of how, you know, just a simple project that began as a school and me working with a not-for-profit organisation suddenly has now got industry engagement. We've now got you know, postgraduate level student interns working in the project, mentoring K-12 students, learning from industry, and providing and creating benefit for a not-for-profit organisation. So we literally do become allies in this journey, and all getting our own needs met. And it's really quite exciting when it all starts to come together like that.
Awesome. We also have the zombies that are at the door. I think you might have heard the knocking at my door loudly. That's the zombies at the door, or maybe Amazon.
Well, so, you know, in true sort of, you know, Shaun of the Dead style, his stepdad turns into a zombie, and he realizes this at the point at which he asks his mum. He says, "Have you noticed anything different about Dad?" And his mum says, "He's been a bit bitey." And that's the first sign that that it's set in. But at the end of the day, he becomes a very useful ally. And you know, he finishes with the line, "He's not my dad, he's my stepdad. He's not my stepdad, he's my dad." So he becomes the sort of the aid to Shaun. But yeah, you never know where your allies are found and who you can trust. Some of those people are a bit bitey. A lot of those academics out there are very bitey. You know, but you know, where you do find those allies, you really do, you know, you find some good rewards along the way.
And I want to echo Kim's partnerships piece, because I think that's a piece that we've really been exploring lately in the Learning Futures Collaboratory, is this idea of how can external partners and corporations and industry, K-12, school districts, start to enhance this work that we're doing, and the community at large. And we've actually, as we've approached people, I think we've gotten a better reception than we could have ever imagined, because I think that industry is also excited for the future of learning to get here, because they want workers that come in with the skills that they actually need in the workforce. And a lot of times right now, it's not as evident to the workforce or even to the students themselves, the skills that they're gaining through their education. And so I think that one of the big drivers of this and industry wanting to partner with us is also the idea that they want the best workers. And they don't want to have to retrain workers. And so I think that the tighter these partnerships get and the more we can work together, it's only better for our learners. Having these big divides just really doesn't benefit them in the long run. And so I agree. I think that going into it, we might not have expected some of our industry partners or our partners in the community to be so willing to work with us and to help drive this together towards a better future. All right. You have to destroy a zombie's brain, eat brains. So I think that this is a really nice one, because I think we've been talking a lot through this whole session about shifting mindset, shifting the way people think, and really capturing their imagination with these better views of the future that tie, if we can paint these pictures and show them that they're real, and change the mindset of change is difficult and we'll never get there, and it's hard, and there's no money and there's no time to do any of this. I think that we actually change their whole outlook, and we actually help people grow and develop in ways that we couldn't have imagined.
I agree. It's the shift when people start to get it is quite a phenomenal experience. When you see the lights come on, you see their eyes open just that little bit wider, and and there they are. Suddenly they're on board. They start to understand it, and we've seen that with some of our industry partners who start to recognise that with some of the students doing your work, they start to have a new window through to do talent identification, to do workforce development, and our industry partners are starting to step up and say, actually, we'll support. And I know ASU have had something like this with a large coffee chain, and there's a large is it the Starbucks? And it's suddenly the collaborators start to see that there's a whole set of priorities and a whole set of meaningful outcomes that they hadn't anticipated at the outset, and they thought they were doing something altruistic for the rest of us, and it turns out that actually it pays back tenfold for their own priorities and their own strategic mission. So yeah, it's been really exciting watching that side of things emerge.
That totally ties to this, is the idea that once you get a taste, it becomes infectious, right? The
Absolutely.
idea that the bite will turn you. Dan, I saw you ready to chime in. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I was just going to give you a time check actually, and just to say we're getting close to the end of our time, and we want to leave space for questions and any conversation at the end as well.
Yeah, so I think that we're good. The last one I wanted to show you is that the zombies move fast or slow, and depending on the era. And I think this is a really good way to end it, because I think we've talked about this, like meandering and sprinting are both sort of normal paces in working towards the future. I think that a lot of what we do is actually, we've set a vision, but we don't know exactly how to get there. So we kind of wander around the path, trying to figure out exactly what the path is. And sometimes we're just off-roading. there is no path, and we're sort of forging it as we go, and we're having to go around mountains and rivers and things. And sometimes, like with COVID-19, we've really seen this happen, is that sometimes you're sprinting. The demand becomes all that stuff you were working on to launch in 2-3 years. Like, you got to do it now, like yesterday, because we need it. We need better ways than Zoom to interact with people. What do you got? And so then you end up sprinting toward what, once you get that buy-in and that those resources start to come and people get the vision, then you actually start sprinting towards that future. Other?
Yeah, I'm just thinking you can have, you can have slow zombies at mass, which are fine. They're easy to deal with because they're slow, but fast zombies at mass, at scale, is a real challenge. And I think that's an ASU challenge. We have a lot of students who move very quickly, and that's the worst of both scenarios. But they're not all in the same lane, and that's something that President Crow talked to this morning, is we're not all in the same lane, and we're not driving at the same speed in the same lane, and we're not even on the same highway, and learning really is happening at multi-speeds in multi-directions, and that environment is really what we have to design for, and I do think it's a design challenge. It's not it's not something that we have to shape what we had before to fit the future. We can actually design forwards, design new highways, design replacements to highways we maybe don't even need a highway. And I think that that framing really helps to sort of like reinvent as we go forward.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and see what we've got in the chat, see what we've got for questions, because we've got about 2 minutes left. Oh, I missed the rations are scarce. Where did that slide go? I thought did I skip over the rations are scarce slide?
I think so. But
I'm
it is
sorry.
important. I think that's actually a critical one. Is I think we all get very used to working with what we've got to work with, and very often that's very little. And I've got a drama education background, and I really have learned over the years that thin air and imagination can actually take you a lot further than some of the best resourced situations that you can have. The opportunity to create something from nothing is both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. And Heather's alluded to improvisation several times throughout the session, and I think that's exactly what improvisation is. It's taking thin air and imagination and making something out of it that other people can connect with. And that's what I really find is my role as the Learning Futures advisor, is somehow being that catalyst at times of saying, okay, let's make something out of nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that that we have done, when we have our coalitions of the willing, it's amazing what they can do when they have the multiplicative effect. Wow, that was a difficult word. And just getting other people excited actually increases the amount that we can do significantly across the institution. And it does, having some limited resources makes us be more agile in the way that we actually think about things. We have to iterate, we have to do things the best we can. Now, it's nice once we get to the point of having something at a minimum viable product stage to then get that buy-in and input. And I think that you're actually able to, operate on those thin resources until you get to something that needs to be scaled. And that's our challenge, is then what is that next thing that takes it to scale, right? What is the thing that takes it from a scale of a couple of thousand at ASU to a scale of 120,000? And how do we get the resources to actually ramp up? And I think that will always be our challenge at ASU and education in general, is how do we continue to scale these things? Because I think that you're right. I think a lot of the ingenuity and innovation can come from imagination and thin air.
All right, and on that note, we are just at time, so I'm going to go ahead and stop you guys maybe a little earlier than we want to, though. This is a great conversation, and I really thank you guys for coming on and presenting for us. Yeah. just great presentation, guys. Thank you.
To everyone who came,
Thanks,
we're
everyone.
so excited to have you. We're going to go through the chat. We will make our slides available, and all three of us are available for questions. You can find us on, I think our information's all on the Shaping EDU website. So thank you all for attending.